Okay, we are here with Garth Patterson, Executive Director of the Western Grains Research Foundation. We are talking about the over $670,000 likely coming your way or your organization's way because of the railway cap being exceeded. Garth, tell us a bit about how the foundation sort of deals with that money.
Well, Lindsay, the funds that we get anytime the railways exceed the revenue cap are what I would call extraordinary funds. We don't budget for those. We don't count on those. And really, from a farmer's perspective, it's probably not a good news story when the cap is exceeded because that means that they've paid more for transportation costs than they would have liked to have received. However, the way the federal government has set this up, they made the decision a number of years ago to try and do some kind of public good for all farmers anytime that cap is exceeded, instead of trying to being administratively intense and figure out, the dollars and cents back for each delivery. So what that's meant over time is we've accumulated approximately $90 million now in payments, primarily from the revenue cap overage. So that's a lot of money, and I'm sure we'll get into talking about what we plan to do as far as putting that money to work.
And so this is certainly, it's not something that the foundation depends on each year. It's not part of sort of your estimates for the year. This would be on top of the checkoff dollars that you receive. Is it treated any differently though once you've got it? How is it allocated to projects?
Well, that's a good question, Lindsay, and there's probably a long answer to it, but the short answer is that we do treat it differently than the other wheat and barley checkoff funds.
Okay.
So to just tell your listeners about the long answer. First of all, Western Grains Research Foundation is a nonprofit foundation established about 30 years ago. It's run by a board of 14 producers nominated by farm organizations across Western Canada, from Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. So we're Western Canadian in scope, and our only purpose or reason to exist is to fund agriculture research. So we're not involved in policy, market development, or other initiatives that might be more carried out by broad-based farm organizations. But we do work with all of the other farm organizations very closely.
Okay.
And of course, I know we'll talk more about the wheat and barley checkoffs later in our conversation, but those funds are managed differently than the endowment fund. So your question was, how do we manage the endowment fund? The board's objective in managing the endowment fund, first and foremost, is to invest it in research that will benefit producers, because that's where the money came from. The board's goal is to treat the fund in a somewhat sustainable fashion. So we've monitored the principal payments we received over the years and generally tried to spend the interest earned. Certainly the board will spend principal for capital infrastructure and other projects, but generally they would like to treat this as a sustainable fund that can be used over the long term. But now that we're up to $90 million, that does mean that we can do a lot with it. And we do have some new plans that we're just putting in place that I think farmers will be very pleased with, and we can talk about those after if you'd like to.
So tell me, to kind of switch gears a little bit, tell me maybe some of the recent advancements that some of the projects have made, maybe from 2012, maybe some that wrapped up or in late stages.
Well, we picked out a few that farmers might be interested in that are current. Of course, there's been over 200 projects funded over the last 30 years. So there's quite a few. We try to profile them on our website. But a few that I'll just tell your listeners about, and I'll just refer to my notes here and pull this forward. There's some timely interest now. One is relating to mycotoxin detection in grains. Of course, a few years ago with the wet wet season and even wet seasons in other years in other regions, producer interest in mycotoxins has been growing because of the detection. So that technology needs to continue to improve. So we are funding some research at Carleton University in Ottawa with Dr. DeRosa to look at developing technology that could better detect mycotoxin in grains. So that's an example of one. Another one that actually has been in the news over the last year is with the Indian Head Agriculture Research Foundation at Indian Head, the natural air grain drying debate.
Right, yes.
Should turn the fans on at night or daytime or continue. We thought that was a pretty important one to invest in. So that one has just gotten going. Another one, I think producers are becoming more aware and concerned about pest management and monitoring. So we are funding some research with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada with Dr. Otani at Beaver Lodge to look at a Western Canadian network for field crop monitoring of insect pests. It's a pretty broad base as far as what we can do with this fund, but ultimately the lens that we look through is what does this mean to farmers and will it benefit farmers?
So exciting to see what's going on, and we'll keep in touch on what's to come, and perhaps follow up on some of these other projects that are underway, and share some of the exciting stuff going on with your group. So thanks so much, Garth, and we will talk again.